The story of my interview with the devil is now in your hands. The benefits you will receive from it will be in exact proportion to the thought it inspires in you. Today, we're going to be going over one of the most important books that you'll ever lay your eyes on. We're going to be breaking down how to not get caught up in the devil's whims and how to outwit the devil effectively. You make an impression on everyone you meet, just as everyone you meet makes an impression on you. You never know when an acquaintance may become a business associate. There is great power in your network. With great power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man knows that. Your only limitation is the one which you set up in your own mind. You have to form a different identity, a different you, a you that is not you right now, that does not have the limits that you have right now. And then your RAS, this is not in this book, your reticular activation system.
It actually explains why people on the left or the right see the world differently. It's called RAS, reticular activation system. It's selective focus. We see the world very, very differently. We don't believe what we see what we believe. And so we have very, very selective focus. So
this is what our brain operates on. That's why you don't focus on pieces of lint on the floor, because they're not important. But you're going to focus on where you're walking because you don't want to hit your head. Your reticular activation system will choose what you notice and what you don't. Your unconscious and your conscious. So your unconscious controls what your conscious sees. So if you change your unconscious identity, then your conscious will choose to see different things without you even being aware of it. Hence, this line is very true. The only limitation is the one which you set up in your own mind. This is the co-author, Sharon Lecter. So many times, I have been my own worst enemy and needlessly held myself back through a lack of self-confidence. Hill wants us all to discover our other self so we can each reach our maximum potential. I am not sure that I understand just what this other self is, but I do know that there can be no permanent defeat for the man or the woman who discovers it and relies upon it. My other self presented me with an idea which solved my immediate financial problem. The idea flashed into my mind. The other self follows no precedents, recognizes no limitations, and always finds a way to accomplish desired ends. It may meet with temporary defeat, but not with permanent failure. So you're not guaranteed to succeed right away, but it's not permanent failure. You're not going to give up. You're going to go, no, that didn't work. Like Thomas Edison, I'm going to try another one, even if I have to go 10,000 times. He says, I am as sure of the soundness of this statement as I am of the fact of being engaged in writing these lines. That's pretty intense of a statement to make. How many times do we allow a temporary defeat to affect us as if it were permanent failure instead of learning from it and moving on? Every great leader of the past whose record I have examined was beset by difficulties and met with temporary defeat before arriving. Every single one. Failure and temporary defeat are part of the journey to finding true success. I repeat that I do not know exactly what this other self is, but I know enough about it to lean upon it in a spirit of absolute faith in times of difficulty. When the ordinary reasoning faculty of my mind seems to be inadequate for my needs. For everything you have missed, you have gained something else. And for everything you gain, you lose something else. The whole of what we know is a system of compensations. Every defect in one manner is made up in another. Since this other self took charge of me, I have come by useful knowledge which I am sure I would have never discovered while my old fear entity was on the throne, as your RAS was noticing fear. As long as I remain on good terms with my other self, I shall be able to acquire every material thing that I need. Moreover, I shall be able to find happiness and peace of mind. My other self has taught me to concentrate upon my purpose and to forget about the plan by which it is to be attained when I go to prayer. I am not suggesting that material objects may be acquired without plans. What I am saying is that the power which translates one's thoughts or desires into realities has its source in an infinite intelligence, God, which knows more about plans than the one doing the praying. Like the Bible says, do not lean on your own understanding. And stating the case in another way, may it not be wise when praying to trust to the universal mind to hand over the plan best suited for the attainment of the object of that prayer, waiting for that inspirational flash in the mind to show you an inkling of what to start doing, and then you trust it and it starts opening up more. Plan must be transmuted through self-effort self-effort action. Through self-effort action. Do you acknowledge that in order for your plan to be successful, that you must take action? Same reason why you can prove God in one sentence. Something can't come from nothing. That doesn't make any sense. That's why God is proven immediately. I now pray not for more of this world's goods and greater blessings, but to be worthy of that which I already have. I find that this plan is better than the old one. I discovered that I had the privilege of approaching infinite intelligence either for the purpose of offering thanks for what I already possessed and for guidance. Every individual has the power to change his or her material or financial status by first changing the nature of his or her beliefs. Do not confuse the word belief with the word wish. The two are not the same. Everyone is capable of wishing, but the element of faith is the only sure power by which a wish may be translated into a belief and a belief into a reality. The mind acts upon one's dominating or most pronounced desires. There is no escape from this fact. It is a fact indeed. Be careful what you set your heart upon, for it surely shall be yours. We're going to say it again. The mind acts upon one's dominating or most pronounced desires. Most pronounced, most repeated, most emphasized. How do you give a thought emphasis? I would say emotion, whether it be quiet or loud emotion. Emotion is what gives that color, that thought color. Edison, he met with temporary defeat more than 10,000 times before wresting this secret from nature. It was finally yielded up to him because he believed it would be, and he kept on trying until he had the answer. A prayer is a released thought, sometimes expressed in audible words and at other times expressed silently. It could be a loud emotion, that you're saying with audible words or bringing into reality, touching, making things happen, or it could be a silent, expressed silently. I have observed by every experience that a silent prayer is as efficacious as the one which is expressed in words, because you're repeating it with emotion. That's why. You can say it with words all you want, but if you don't repeat it with emotion, doesn't matter. If you're thinking it, negative stuff over and over and over again, it's negative, it's strong, it's going to grip, it's going to pull you in like a whirlpool. I have observed that one's state of mind is the determining factor when prayer works as well as when it does not. The state of mind known as faith apparently opens to one the medium of a sixth sense through which one may communicate with sources of power and information far surpassing any available through the five physical senses. We're all focused on what we can see, what we hear, people's opinions, what we're seeing and experiencing. But what we need to be focused on is how we can translate that into what we are envisioning in our mind. Pattern, in case I haven't said it enough times, is repeat the thought a lot with strong emotion. That makes it more likely to get contact on the baseball and get a base hit. I consist of negative energy, and I live in the minds of people who fear me. Perhaps you will better understand my nature if I tell you I am the negative portion of the atom. Oh, I see what you are preparing to claim. You are laying the foundation to say that if it were not for you, there would be no world, no stars, no electrons, no atoms, no human beings, nothing. Is that correct? He says true, absolutely true. And that's false, because he is the father of all lies. He caused the corruption and the state that we're in now. But I believe the Bible even says that he's the ruler of this world for a time. Earth, not ruler of all. That I straight up crossed out. I said the devil's a liar. Well, if you only occupy one half of energy and matter, who occupies the other half? And the devil answers, the other half is occupied by my opposition. I crossed the other half and said, the whole thing is occupied by my opposition. There is no such thing as something from nothing. God is everywhere because he is the something that created everything. So you have the universe divided up with God. Is that your claim? The devil says, not my claim, but the actual fact. Before this interview is finished, you will understand why my claim is true. You will also understand why it has to be true, or there could be no world such as yours, no earthbound creature such as you. Without the devil, there could definitely be a world. He's just spitting nonsense. He's thinking that we're not going to be accurate thinkers. The devil is afraid of accurate thought. That's not accurate thought. Caught you in another lie. Lies. I said Jesus Christ has defeated him. You do not have the universe divided up with God. You are messing with God's creation because you can't touch God or Jesus. Napoleon says, how do you gain control of the minds of people? Devil answers, oh, that is easy. I merely move in and occupy the unused space of the human brain. I sow the seeds of negative thought in the minds of people so I can occupy and control the space. Let's dissect those two sentences. First sentence, I merely move in and occupy the unused space of the human brain. Lazy thinking. You can't always be present. That's the human nature. We get distracted, we have as Cliff Knuckle says, have the capacity to do what is right at all times.
The all-powerful God chose to partially limit his power by giving us a free will, which means because God gave me free will, I can haul back, slap this pretty woman in the face, and if I turn to you and say, God made me do it, I'm a liar and a con artist. God gave me a hand and a will. He gave me this hand to love and respect her, not to smack her. And if I have the audacity to smack her and then turn to you and say, God made me do it, I had to do it, God made me, I'm a con artist. I'm lying through my teeth.
As the Bible says, our heart's evil imaginations, our evil desires, I think it refers to it as, corrupts us and leads us astray, rather. So the more we can understand, again, God, it'll help our discernment, our intuition. Discernment, intuition, same thing. You can't always be 100%, but when you lean on God, he's got the other half. I sow the seeds of negative thought in the minds of people so I can occupy and control the space. So what he does is he'll throw you off your game with a curveball, something you didn't see coming. Boom. Now he's got you making the decision. Napoleon says, go ahead and describe your clever tricks. There's 6 of them. 1. Poverty. 2. Criticism. 3. Ill health. 4. Loss of love. 5. Old age, related to the 6th. Death. Which of these 6 fears serves you the most often? The first and the last. Poverty and death. Like I said earlier, death awaits us all. So, like the Bible says, death, where art thou sting? Because through Jesus Christ we have everlasting life. Only through Jesus will we see the Father. I plant these fears in the minds of people so deftly that they believe them to be their own creation. I'm under the opinion myself, and I could be wrong. This is just my own thought. Think about it. Demons have been here. The devil's been here a long time, since Adam and Eve, right? The devil, demons were there. They've been here the whole time. Not like they took a vacation and left. Been here messing with humans the whole time. The same ones. There's not new ones, so it's the same ones. If it's the same ones, think about how someone can be very good at a voice impression, right?
Pappy, you swim with the alligators. If you get attacked, it's not your fault.
Jack Nicholson doing the Joker.
Or hypnotists nowadays.
I want to show you what trance looks like. Look over there. Look at his face. He's already in trance. Sleep. Right?
They're good at, getting you in a trance. They trick you. I think they can sound like you. Or just random thoughts. You can shut your brain off. Creates a negative thought, the space, right? He says, I merely move in and occupy the unused space of the human brain. I sow the seeds of negative thought in the minds of people so I can occupy and control the space. So he's a pattern interrupter in the negative sense.
Sleep.
Or sometimes in the tempting sense. Distracted. And then before you know it, you're like, where's my momentum? What was I even doing? Devil says, enemies of mine discovered the power of positive thought, placed it in the minds of men, and then began a battle on my part to remain in control. Jesus Christ, the enemies of mine discovered the power of positive thought. He's putting it very lightly that enemies of mine, Jesus, discovered the power of positive thought, resurrected and explained to one the good news. Very positive thought, I'd say. Placed it in the minds of men, so deftly that they would die for it, and then began a battle on my part to remain in control. I take it from your answer that men who think are your enemies. Is that right? It is correct. So I wrote down real thinkers to challenge our mental bandwidth. Your bandwidth is your internal mental space that you have to operate fully. The devil says, my favorite physical dwelling place, as I have told you, is the minds of the earthbound. The amount of space I occupy in each individual's mind depends upon how little and what sort of thinking that person does. As I have told you, I cannot entirely control any person who thinks. So I'm sure he can come after you because we're not perfect like Jesus. That's why we have to continually rely on Jesus. And even if things get unfair, remember it's not Jesus or God that made it unfair. It's this world, the conditions. Possibly take some responsibility for yourself as well, and just know that in the eternal sense, Jesus and Father God have us. Even if things go completely wrong here, who cares? The devil is trying to trick you. He wants to trick you with old age and death, because we think death is the end and we're scared. Jesus says it's not the end. You see, I do not seek to control stars and planets. I prefer the control of human minds. I think it's funny there. I also wrote, you see, I do not seek to control stars and planets. I said because he failed and already can't win. That's why he doesn't seek to control stars and planets, the universe, the world. He already lost. It's written, dude. He knows he's done. So that's why he prefers the control of human minds, because he wants to take people down with him and make it a miserable company down there. We can't touch God. He can't touch Jesus. So he goes after us. The devil continues saying, you see, I'm constantly at work, preparing the minds of people before death, so I can appropriate them when they come back to my plane. Appropriate their experience in hell when they come back to my plane. Back as in back to the spiritual, maybe? I deliberately discourage people from accumulating material wealth because poverty discourages men from thinking and makes them easy prey for me. My next best is ill health. An unhealthy body discourages thinking. Napoleon Hill says, who are your greatest enemies on earth? The devil says, all who inspire people to think and act on their own initiative are my enemies. Habits come in pairs, triplets, and quadruplets. Any habit which weakens one's willpower invites a flock of its relatives to move in and take possession of the mind. The most important question in your entire life, in everyone's entire life, is where are you going to go after you die? And if you seriously look into it, Jesus is the most reliable. But you will never be the sort of thinker that frightens me unless you gain and exercise greater control over your own emotions. I wrote down very important, very important. He says, you will never be the sort of thinker that frightens me unless you gain and exercise greater control over your own emotions. I also wrote down, like Jesus did in the desert, he exercised great control over his emotions. The devil says, I prefer the type of person who makes no pretense of thinking. I can manipulate that sort of person without difficulty. I could not control 98% of the people of the world if all people were skilled in thinking for themselves. When a person begins to drift on any subject, he is headed straight towards the gate of what you earthbound call hell. Drift. People who think for themselves never drift. A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind. He would rather let me occupy his mind and do his thinking than go to the trouble of thinking for himself. A drifter is one who accepts whatever life throws in his way without making a protest or putting up a fight. He doesn't know what he wants from life, spends all of his time getting just that. A drifter has lots of opinions, but they are not his own. Most of them are supplied by me. A drifter is one who is too mentally lazy to use his own brain. That is the reason I can take control of people's thinking and plant my own ideas in their minds. I wrote down, don't be lazy, prolonged focus, free will is our superpower. Those who do little or no thinking for themselves are drifters. A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind. So I'm sure you can get a little bit of disruption, obviously, but the overall is having the emotions controlled so you can bring them back down to the baseline that you choose. Environment, as we'll talk about later, everything has a rhythm, every room. That's why when you change stuff in the room, you can make the energy feel different in 2 minutes. This is where the principle of habit enters. One by one, I enter the mind and establish habits. The devil goes on to say, I enter the minds of people through thoughts which they believe to be their own. Not every thought that goes through your brain is your own thought. How he first enters the mind is through thoughts which they believe to be their own. Don't let your thoughts or your in the moment feelings get you on a negative track to where all of a sudden now you're lost in the momentum of thinking that way negatively, and it actually turns into your own negative spiral of thinking. Habits are related. Drift in one direction, and soon you will be drifting in all directions. I also use environmental habits to give me a definite grip on my victims. He'll confuse our minds with unprovable ideas concerning a world of which we know nothing. So what the devil is going to try to do is catch you in moments where you're weak. Just like he tried to catch Jesus in the desert when he was weak, hungry, thirsty, and said, "What? Aren't you the Son of God? Turn these stones to bread." And Jesus said, we don't live by food alone, but by the word of God. And that right here is the basis for what I'm saying, is if you understand the correct ways of thinking, God's way of thinking, like Jesus leaned on God's word. So it's not by food alone, but by God's word, by God's instruction. I use every human weakness to gain and keep control of the human mind. The devil and his demons have been here since the beginning, since Adam and Eve. Since before Adam and Eve, they've been plotting against Father God and Jesus. They know that they're beaten. This is the same Satan, the same demons that messed with Abel, Cain, David, Adam and Eve, that know human weaknesses very, very well. They knew it very well back then. You think they don't know it even better now? They do. And if you drift in one direction, you're going to drift in others. The evil imaginations, the heart's evil desires are what pull us away from God. God doesn't push us away. Our heart's evil desires massage and caress us into slowly accepting, like he said. He destroys the habit of thinking for ourselves by entering the mind of us through thoughts which we believe to be our own. So he studies us, watches us. What am I, Gollum? He watches us for the precious. The precious is your soul. He can't touch God. He can't touch Jesus. Jesus whooped him up. He can't do nothing against them. But what do God and Jesus love the most? You and me. As long as it fears something, I will enter its mind through that fear and limit the child's power to think independently. Could be a child, could be you. The devil will enter through that fear. He'll build upon what only he can touch, the negative, the fear, and will limit you to think independently. Now, I do want to have a side note to that, because negativity, the devil's way of thinking, can feel good. Feels good to be on a power trip about yourself. Feels good to be lusting after a pretty girl. Even though that's not fear, that's still a fear mindset. For example, Jesus said, even if you lust after a woman in your mind, you have committed adultery in your heart. It's about the intention. It's about the thought that's in your mind. How are you thinking? Why are you doing what you're doing? The devil will try to come in through good feelings as well, especially when the devil realizes that he can't touch you through negative ones. First one to conquer is lust. Lust of the world. Let's put it that way. Lust of the world. Anything in the world. It could be business. Whatever you lust after, you have to have control of that and realize that God and Jesus, the truth, is more important than what you desire. The heart's evil desires. The heart's evil desires will pull you away and make it logically make sense why you're doing what you're doing. Realistically, it may feel good in the moment, but what have you gotten from any of that? Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this video. He will use every known human weakness to gain and keep control of the human mind. He has no sympathy for you. Do not give him a foothold. You go out of your way to keep people from thinking? Yes, accurate thought is death to me. And the most accurate thought of them all is that Jesus Christ died for our sins, literally rose again with the power of heaven and God. He said it was going to happen before. He did it. Stayed for 40 days afterwards so he could eat with people, have them touch his hands, prove that he was really there for 40 days in Acts. Read it. Then he ascended into the clouds of heaven, not by himself, with a crowd of people watching him, including the same apostles that later died for that claim, that he really rose again, and they really saw him and hung out with him for 40 days, and he went up in the clouds. And what did Jesus say? Only through I will you see the Father. I and the Father are one. And Jesus said this was going to happen. He predicted it all. He is the most reliable human to have ever walked the face of this earth. The reason why is because he's also the Son of God, and he proved it. That is death to the devil. That's my translation when I read accurate thought is death to me, because that is accurate thought. The devil says, when they begin to think in constructive terms of faith, courage, hope, and definiteness of purpose, they immediately become allies of my opposition and are therefore lost to me. Are therefore lost to me because the devil will no longer have a foothold when you're thinking in terms of faith, courage, hope. Nothing can stop me except the power of accurate thought. People who think accurately do not drift on any subject. I said, Jesus the most accurate thinker. He says about marriage, I cause men and women to drift into marriage without plan or purpose designed to convert the relationship into harmony. I keep them so busy finding fault with one another that they never have time to do anything else long enough to break the habit of drifting. Realize that the devil is trying to enter your mind through thoughts which you believe to be your own, because he reads that you're upset with a situation with your girl or with your friend even, and is going to try to trick you into grabbing onto one of his nasty negative thoughts because he understands the situation. Remember that we read earlier that he said I use every known human weakness to gain and keep control of the human mind. He does not play fair. He has no mercy. Be very careful when you are in high states of emotion, even excitement, especially anger, especially sadness. You're probably not fully accurately controlling your thoughts in that moment. What does the devil try to do? He tries to enter through the space that you're not using. He'll come in and try to occupy that space with thoughts that you believe to be your own, which are really his negative, drifting, hypnotic rhythm thoughts that he's trying to get you to grab onto. So then you can later go, yep, I thought that, and you associate with it, and then now it's part of your identity. To drift out of school into the first job they can find with no definite aim or purpose except to make a living. Through this, I trick millions of people in fear of poverty all their lives. I cause people to spend freely and to save sparingly, or not at all, until I take complete control of them through their fear of poverty. Easy thing that really helped me out, the richest man in Babylon. Basically, if you make $500 a week, take $50, 10%. Take it out cash. That's what helped me. Do not touch it, ever. That's your forever savings, okay? And then week after week after week, eventually you're gonna have savings. And it makes you feel secure because you're like, I just automatically have savings, you know, and eventually it gets pretty big and you're like, okay. And then if an emergency happens, you're not instantly in panic mode. So set up for yourself instant processes, one, but two, also realize that the devil will cause you to spend freely and to save sparingly or not at all. One, I cause people to drift into inharmonious and unpleasant environments in the home, in their places of occupation, in their relationship with relatives and acquaintances, and to remain there until I claim them through the habit of drifting. I cause people to drift into the habit of thinking negative thoughts. This leads to negative acts. So he enters our mind through thoughts which we believe to be our own and tries to drift us into the habit of thinking negative thoughts, which eventually spiral and create us doing things negatively. When I move in, I do so by appealing to people through negative thoughts which they believe to be their own. I don't know if you tended to pick up on the pattern I've been saying here, but that's it. I plant the seeds of negative thought in the minds of people. I cause people to allow me to do their thinking for them because they are too lazy and too indifferent to think for themselves. That's it. I cause people to allow me to do their thinking. He causes people to allow him to do their thinking. He does that by causing us to be lazy or to cause us to be indifferent, which is like, I just don't care. I don't care what happens. I'm just gonna watch this episode and relax. Causes you to be indifferent and lazy in your thinking, and then he's got you. Then he comes in and he puts in whatever thoughts he wants to put in. And now you think it's your thought. Like the Bible says, stay sober and also vigilant. Not just sober. Vigilant means like awake, you're ready to go, ready to fight. You can't be lazy thinking. Of course, there's gonna be times where you can't always be on it, but that's why you lean on Jesus, because that faith, like he said, if you think in terms of faith and hope, constructive ways of thinking, he's lost. He's lost you. He can't touch you because he doesn't have a foothold to grab onto. He can only grab on through negative thoughts and inaccurate thinking. Any habit which causes one to procrastinate, put off reaching a definite decision, leads to the habit of drifting. And remember, you're going to try to make sense of it in your own mind. Your brain's so good at it. So just be aware of your own self-talk and you'll be able to catch it. Laziness plus indifference equals procrastination. Procrastination is drifting. When an opportunity slipped through your fingers because you were too slow to seize it in time. I want everyone watching this video to think of a time when you let an opportunity go because you were just too slow to the punch. And you realize looking back, I could have done that. Man alone defies nature's laws and drifts when he wills. I control the minds of men only because they neglect or refuse to control and use their own minds. And I wrote down because God's superpower he gave us is free will. And that's why accurate thought is death to the devil, because sometimes it will suck, but you know the right thing to do is to go through it. Please tell me how this drifting habit affects people in the everyday walks of life, and tell me in terms the average person can understand. Devil says, I would prefer to keep this interview up among the stars. Keep it so complicated that we can't wrap our heads around it. Napoleon says, no doubt you would. That would save you from being exposed. But let us come back to Earth. Tell me now what drifting is doing to us. I am paying each of them with the sop of his own vanity by making him believe he is acting on his own account. That is another trick of mine. The devil kind of reads us and can guess very accurately what we're thinking with the unused portion of our brains. Whatever amount of portion that is, it could be 2%. He's going to enter through that little amount of portion that we're not using in our thinking, and he's going to pay each of us with the sop of our own vanity. Stuff that he knows that you're going to be vain about, stuff that he knows your ego is going to want to hold on to, like feeling yourself too much to the point of vanity and egotism, to the point of just not thinking things through clearly. And he's gonna make you think that it's you doing it. So again, you gotta be careful of your own thoughts and which thought you're gonna grab onto, because the thought that you grab onto is going to take you places. Drifting is the most common cause of failure in every walk of life. I can control anyone whom I can induce to form the habit of drifting on any subject. Poverty, like physical illness, is a contagious disease. I wrote down, because you become like those around you. Your social circle equals your mental results, your mental patterns. It's like a flywheel. People that are around us set the standards that we uphold. Even if you're not in the habit of drifting, if they are, then subconsciously being around them often makes your brain more apt to relax and be like that because it sees it often. We all know that, the top 5 people that we're around we become, but we tend to ignore it. We tend to, like the devil said, drift into inharmonious relationships without any definite purpose or plan. Men who know how to get material things of life generally know how to keep out of the hands of the devil as well. And I wrote down, because you're avert to drifting. The ability to acquire things is contagious. So these are character traits of the drifter. So if you hear any of these and you're like, yeah, that applies to me, self-analyze. He will lack enthusiasm and initiative to begin anything he is not forced to undertake. And he will plainly express his weakness by taking the line of least resistance whenever he can do so. He will be ill-tempered and lacking in control over his emotions. His personality will be without magnetism, and it will not attract other people. He will make the same mistake over and over again, never profiting by failure. He may begin many things, but he will complete nothing. He will never reach decisions on anything if he can avoid it, and if he is forced to decide, he will reverse himself at the first opportunity. He will eat too much and exercise too little. He will criticize others who are succeeding in their chosen calling. I'm gonna say that one again because I feel like a lot of us do it. Like the devil said earlier, he encourages us to find faults in other people so that we're so busy doing that we have no time to get ourselves out of drifting. Spend your whole time talking about him and her and people at work and celebrities. You realistically think about the amount of time that you've spent doing so. Think about how many hours that you've spent talking about things you don't like, about celebrities, actors, musicians, people you don't even know. And we're sitting there criticizing others who have succeeded in their chosen calling. It's a drifter mindset to gossip. That's why the Bible says not to gossip and slander, because it doesn't lead to anything good. It's not productive. Continuing the traits. If he works for others, he will criticize them to their backs and flatter them to their faces. But where does it lead you? It leads you into random scattered thought. The first sign of a non-drifter is this: he is always engaged in doing something definite through some well-organized plan, which is definite. He has a major goal in life toward which he is always working, and many minor goals, all of which lead toward his central scheme. The tone of his voice, the quickness of his step, the sparkle in his eyes, the quickness of his decisions clearly mark him as a person who knows exactly what he wants and is determined to get it, no matter how long it may take or what price he must pay. If you ask him questions, he gives you direct answers and never falls back on evasions or resorts to subterfuge. He will be found up front, whether he is playing a game or fighting a war. If he does not know the answers, he will say so frankly. He never blames others for his mistakes, no matter if they deserve the blame. It's the opposite of what we just talked about before. The major difference between the drifter and the non-drifter is something equally available to both. It is simply the prerogative right of each to use his own mind and think for himself. Don't let the devil do the thinking for you. You fear the opposition of no individual because you know it will be short, but you do fear truth. So what Napoleon here is saying, that the devil doesn't fear the opposition of any individual, one of us, because he knows that it'll be short, because we only live so long and then we die and then can't interact with this world no more because we're dead. But you do fear truth. And the truth is, the one person who died that can interact with this world is Jesus Christ. There is power in repetition. If you don't feel like you're confident in what you want to be confident in yet, put more reps in, like you're bench pressing, you're working that muscle out. And what helps the reps stronger is added emotion. It's like putting color onto a black and white picture. Color is the emotion. The picture, the outline itself, is the reps. Color adds the emotions. Devil says, I am powerless to influence or control you because you have found the secret approach to my kingdom. You know that I exist only in the minds of people who have fears. Flattery is a bait of incomparable value to all who wish to gain control over others. Flattery. It has powerful pulling qualities because it operates through two of the most common human weaknesses, vanity and egotism. There is a certain amount of vanity and egotism in everyone. In some people, these qualities are so pronounced, they literally serve as a rope by which one may be bound. The best of all ropes is flattery. First thing the devil's going to do, in my personal experience, is going to tempt you with the lusts of your heart. It could be literally lusting after a pretty girl. It could be lusting after respect. You want money. Everyone wants more money. So he'll pull on you through the flattery of those ideas. Soothes you down, gets you all relaxed, flatters you. Flattery is the chief bait through which men seduce women. Sometimes, in fact, frequently, women use the same bait to gain control of men, especially men who cannot be mastered through sex appeal. When they can't be bought through lust, the women buy the men through flattery. That's how the devil does it. Buys us first through the lusts and the good feelings of this and that. And if that doesn't work in your discipline, he'll flatter you. Causes lack of caution. If you don't watch where you step, you could walk right onto thin ice. An inaccurate thought is death to us, just as accurate thought is death to the devil. If you have confidence in thin ice, it's gonna break and you're gonna fall and die.
What?
No, feelings don't matter with the facts, and that's the facts. It doesn't matter how you felt about that thin ice. If the devil can trick you to have confidence in that thin ice, pleasures of this world, that thin ice will break. Flattery is the chief bait with which my agents weave their way into the confidence of people from whom they procure information needed to carry on warfare. Beware of flattery. The devil is the biggest hustler of them all. He uses every known weakness of man to gain and keep control of their minds. He does not play fair. There is no mercy. We have the biggest mercy through Jesus, but the devil shows us no mercy. Through what motive can women be most easily flattered? Their vanity. Tell a woman she is pretty or that she wears clothes well. What motive is most effective in harpooning men? Egotism, with a capital E. Tell a man he has a strong Herculean body or that he is a great business tycoon, and he will purr like a cat and smile like an opossum. Women influence men through a technique consisting first of ability to inject soft, cooing baby tones into their voices, and second, by closing their eyes into a half-closed position, which registers hypnotism in connection with the flattery of men. Sharon wrote, I am sure there are a few women agitated by this. In fact, I was at first. Roll your eyes and keep going. There is truth here. So women, the devil says, she sells him his own egotism. That is the most effective thing they use. It works when sex appeal fails. Unless they are non-drifters, the bigger they come, the harder they fall when the expert flatterer moves in on them. One of my most effective devices is failure. The majority of people begin to drift as soon as they meet with opposition, and not 1 out of 10,000 will keep on trying after failing 2 or 3 times. Failure breaks down one's morale, destroys self-confidence, subdues enthusiasm, dulls imagination, and drives away definiteness of purpose. Because it breaks down your mental confidence in yourself. Your identity is destroyed when you fail. But if you remember that failure is just part of the process and you move on, the devil's trying to get you to drift, by focusing on the negative, then you're just like, all right, it's data, didn't work. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times. You think he sat there and cried about it every time? Without these qualities, no one can permanently succeed in any undertaking because the failure will break their mental state down and make them drift onto something else random. Only unless you're willing to pay the price, any price necessary, fail as much as you need to fail to find the correct data and information that makes it work. Edison converted failure into a stepping stone to achievement. The same quality is the chief asset of every man who attains outstanding success in any calling. What is that chief asset one more time? The chief asset is converting failure into a stepping stone to achievement. Converting the failure into small little stepping stones that get you closer and closer to your achievement before you realize, boom, I'm there. Julie Crone, the first woman ever inducted into the Thoroughbred, the Horse Racing Hall of Fame. Many of the horse owners simply would not hire a woman jockey. She said her motto of perseverance was, keep showing up. I discovered if I showed up every day and did my best, eventually they'd put me on a horse just to get rid of me. She used failure into a stepping stone to achievement. That was her chief asset, her most important asset. Search accurately into the lives of men and women who achieve enduring success, and you will find without exception that their success has been in exact proportion to the extent that they surmounted failure. Every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Failure is a virtue only when it does not lead one to quit trying and begin drifting. Because the devil will use failure to discourage you and start you to drifting, get you on a negative rut. Failure is only a virtue when it doesn't lead one to quit trying and begin drifting. Just treat failure like data. Edison converted failure into a stepping stone to achievement, while the others used it as an alibi for not producing results. So you don't gotta be better. You just have to fail forward more than everyone. One of my most effective tricks is known to you as propaganda. Propaganda is any device, plan, or method by which people can be influenced without knowing that they are being influenced or the source of the influence. When men's bellies are filled, they drift freely with one who does the filling. Hungry men get out from under control. Okay, Napoleon says basically, exactly how do you convert human beings into propagandists and lure them into self-imprisonment? Devil goes on to say, I make my first entry into an individual's mind by bribing him. So the temptation, he bribes you with a lust of the world, tries to get you to take the bait. Napoleon says, what do you use as a bribe? I use many things, all of them pleasant things the individual covets. Love, the thirst for sex expression. Covetousness, for money. The obsessive desire to gain something for nothing. Vanity in women, I guess their looks. Egotism in men, how we're perceived. Desire to be the master of others. Desire for intoxicants and narcotics. Desire for self-expression through words and deeds. Desire to imitate others. Desire for perpetuation of life after death. Desire to be a hero or heroine. Desire for physical food. If the individual's greatest weakness is the desire for money, I intensify his desire and induce him to go after money. Then when he gets near it, I snatch it away from him. After the trick has been repeated a few times, the poor fellow gives in and quits. Then I take over a little more space in his mind and fill it with the fear of poverty. That is one of my best mind fillers. Napoleon says, but what happens if the victim fools you and gets his hands on a lot of money? You don't fill his mind with fear of poverty then, do you? If we use failure properly as identifying what works and what doesn't work, gathering data and doubling down on what works without getting so emotional about it, we can use failure to find our way to success. In fact, that's the only way to do it, through persistent failure. But the devil knows that failure is enough to defeat most people, so what he'll do is he'll dangle whatever you're desiring in front of your face and then snatch it away. And then when you eventually accept that you're just not good enough for it, or whatever the line of thinking is, then he goes into your brain, takes over a little tiny more space because you're not thinking consciously, you're not choosing to think because you're like, I don't have any control. So the devil says, no, I don't. Meaning he doesn't fill their mind with poverty when they actually accumulate riches. No, I don't. I take over the space by filling it with something which serves my purpose just as well. I start overfeeding him with the things that he can buy with it. For example, I cause him to stuff himself with rich foods. This slows down his thinking capacity, endangers his heart, and starts him on the road to drifting. Makes you overindulge in the lusts of this world, because when you have an abundance of money, you can buy a lot of those things. You can overindulge in them. The devil's going to intensify the desire and fill it with something which serves the devil's purpose. Then I pester him with intestinal poisoning through the surplus food he eats. That also slows down his thinking and gives him a nasty disposition. Overindulgence in sex starts more men to drifting toward failure than all other causes combined. I was actually reading chapter 10 in Think and Grow Rich, talks about sex transmutation, how sex is the strongest desire that us humans have. He said that the desire for sex is so strong that many people risk their reputation and their life to fulfill it. So that just proves how strong it is. How many times that you were just acting out of character because of the desire of sex being so strong. So what Napoleon Hill was saying in the sex transmutation chapter, which correlates to this, overindulgence in sex starts more men to drifting toward failure than all other causes combined. So Napoleon Hill was saying how sex is the strongest desire. So if you can take that desire, the energy and emotion, because everything is energy and matter, right? Energy can eventually turn into matter. So you take the strongest form of energy which you have available to you, which is the desire for sex, and transmute the desire for sex into something, a plan, a definite action that you're doing, that you're taking that same potent energy that creates life, that makes men risk their reputation, go out of character, sometimes risk their life for. You take that, and instead of focusing on the usual stuff, now you can take it and turn it into anything that you want. So sex transmutation. So food and sex are two of your surefire baits, is that correct? Yes. With these two lures, I can take over a majority of my victims, and then there is a desire for money. Food, sex, and money, those three desires you need to keep an eye on and make sure that you're in full control of them. Because if not, they may accidentally drift you. Food, sex, and money. Because you need food, you're gonna have sexual impulses. You can't avoid that. It's how you handle it. And then you're gonna need money. You're going to desire some form of being able to pay for yourself, right? Even if you're the most zen person on earth. So those three things are going to continually come up in your life: food, sex, and money. And the devil's going to try to get you with those things. So he'll use every known human weakness to gain control of the minds. Take a look at those who acquire a large amount of money quickly without time to get wisdom along with it, and observe how they use it. Look into the records of moving picture stars or athletes who suddenly find themselves in possession of big money and hero worship and praise from the public. Observe how quickly I move in and take them over in many cases. It takes those famous people and ramps up their desire for food, sex, and money, and reputation, and how you're perceived. Vanity and egotism. What about those who acquire money slowly by rendering some form of useful service? Are they easily snared too? Oh, I get them all right. But I generally have to change my bait. Where my purpose is best served, I see to it that they get what they want most, but I wrap in the package something that they don't want. You lure people on through their natural desires, but you slip your deadly poison into the object of those desires wherever you can. The devil says, now you're catching on. You see, I play both ends against the middle. The non-drifter resembles a fish that steals the bait from your hook, but refuses to take the hook. You bribe your victims through their natural desires and lead them astray while you induce them to become drifters if they respond to your lure. Do your own thinking on all occasions. The fact that human beings are given complete control over nothing save the power to think their own thoughts is laden with significance. Decide definitely what you want from life, then create a plan for attaining it, and be willing to sacrifice everything else if necessary rather than accept permanent defeat. Analyze temporary defeat, no matter of what nature or cause, and extract from it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Be willing to render useful service equivalent to the value of all material things you demand in life, and render the service first. Recognize your brain is a receiving set that can be attuned to receive communications from the universal storehouse of infinite intelligence, God, to help you transmute your desires into their physical equivalent. Recognize that your greatest asset is time. The only thing except the power of thought which you own outright is time. And one thing which can be shaped into whatever material things you want is time. Budget your time so none of it is wasted. Demand what you want and insist upon getting exactly that with no substitutes. The devil's going to try to stop you through failure a few times. He's going to dangle it right in your face, take it away, dangle it in your face, take it away, hoping that you will accept the defeat in the poverty mindset. But if you continue on, Father Failure eventually gets tired. Father Persistence wins. Recognize that life is a cruel taskmaster, and that either you master it or it masters you. Never accept from life anything you do not want. If that which you do not want is temporarily forced upon you, you can refuse in your own mind to accept it, and it will make way for the thing that you do want. So never accept defeat. It's only temporary. Like a brief summary of everything we just went over in one little sentence. Be definite in everything you do and never leave unfinished thoughts in the mind. Form the habit of reaching definite decisions on all subjects. Chapter 6, Hypnotic Rhythm. Hypnotic rhythm. It is the same law through which people can be hypnotized. You can see that an oak tree grows from an acorn and a pine grows from the seed of its ancestor. An acorn never produces a pine, and a pine seed never produces an oak. The Bible says, you know them by their fruits. That's why you must stay connected to the vine. Compare it with the method by which one learns to play music. At first, the notes are memorized in the mind. Then they are related to one another through melody and rhythm. By repetition, the melody and rhythm become fixed in the mind. Observe how relentlessly the musician must repeat a tune before he masters it. Any impulse of thought that the mind repeats over and over through habit forms an organized rhythm. Undesirable habits can be broken. They must be broken before they assume the proportions of rhythm. Rhythm is the last stage of habit. Any thought or physical movement which is repeated over and over through the principle of habit finally reaches the proportion of rhythm. It is something like a whirlpool in water. An object may keep floating indefinitely unless it is caught in a whirlpool. Those who control and use their own minds escape my web. I wrote, but don't lean on my own understanding, submit to God. Devil says, my opposition, power you earthbound call God, has everything to do with the salvation of people from eternal annihilation, and for that reason it is my opposition who provides every human being with the privilege of using his own mind. Like I said, free will. That's what I wrote down. God, his opposition, provides every human being with the privilege of using his own mind. And he also says, my opposition, power you earthbound people call God, has everything to do with the salvation of people from eternal annihilation. What did Jesus come down here to do? Oh, die for our sins so that we wouldn't eternally annihilate in hell? Oh, yeah, it's interesting. Notice how the devil doesn't say Jesus. In other words, when you gain control of a person, you take over all there is of his individuality up to the time that he quits using his own mind. Is that correct? That is how I operate. Once I fill one's mind with fear, I have little trouble causing him to drift until I have entangled him in the web of hypnotic rhythm. So he tries to get you with fear, and then he'll start to get you to start thinking negatively, and then you're entangled into a web of hypnotic rhythm. What human fear best serves your purpose? The fear of death. The Bible says, "O death, where art thou sting?" Because Jesus is there to meet us on the other side into eternal glory. Why is the fear of death your favorite weapon? Because no one knows. And by the very nature of the laws of the universe, no one can prove definitely what happens after death. Right there, we're going to stop because Jesus can prove what happens after death, because Jesus said, knock down this temple and I will build it in 3 days. They didn't know what he meant, but they understood what he meant when he died, and then 3 days later he resurrected, by the way, stayed for 40 days so that he could prove to everyone around him just how really alive and well he was. So if he could say that before it happened, predict all that, do it, Jesus can prove what happens after death. That's why the devil says accurate thought is the death of me. Because once you realize how accurate Jesus is, you can take anything he says just because he said it. You don't need to be so smart to understand the very nature of the laws of the universe, because Jesus already understands it for us. Tell me, what would give you cause to worry? My only worry is that someday a real thinker may appear on earth. Christ was the real thinker who appeared on earth and gave accurate thought, the deadly blow that killed the devil and sealed his fate in hell forever. What would happen if a thinker did appear? People would learn the greatest of all truths, that the time they spend in fearing something would, if reversed, give them all they want in the material world and save them from me after death. What is keeping such a thinker from appearing in the world? Fear of criticism, the devil says. It may interest you to know that the fear of criticism is the only effective weapon I have with which to whip you. Napoleon says, with what did you flatter me? Flattery is the best bribe I could offer you. It is the bribe I used on you effectively before you got the upper hand on me. Napoleon says, with what did you flatter me? With many things. Chief among them, sex, and the desire for self-expression. What effect did your bribes have on me? They caused you to neglect your major purpose in life and started you to drifting. Napoleon says, was that all you did to me through your bribes? Devil says, that was plenty. The devil is just trying to drift us from our purpose. What is the very first step a drifter must take to break the habit? A burning desire to break it. You, of course, know that no one can be hypnotized by another person without his willingness to be hypnotized. The willingness may assume the form of indifference toward life generally, lack of ambition, fear, lack of definiteness of purpose. Nature does not need one's consent in order to place him under the spell of hypnotic rhythm. It only needs to find him off guard through any form of neglect to use his own mind. Remember this, whatever you have, use it or you lose it. As I understand you, hypnotic rhythm is a natural law through which nature fixes the vibration of all environments. Is that true? Even this room has its own rhythm. Me, as a person, I have my own rhythm. You watching this, your room has its own rhythm. If you were to clean it and change how things were, it would have a different rhythm. You have your own rhythm. If you were to change what you do day to day, change what you're thinking, you would have a different rhythm. Nature uses hypnotic rhythm to make one's dominating thoughts and one's thought habits permanent, like that whirlpool effect. Once you get in there and it's tight, it kind of just suction cups itself in there and it's doing it on its own, for the good or for the bad. Perhaps you will better understand the working principle of hypnotic rhythm if I tell you its nature is to fix permanently all habits, whether they are mental or physical. If your mind fears poverty, your mind will attract poverty. If your mind demands opulence and expects it, your mind will attract the physical and financial equivalent of opulence. This is in accordance with an immutable law of nature. You are where you are and what you are because of your thoughts and your deeds. Circumstances which people do not understand are classified under the heading of luck. Back of every reality is a cause. Often the cause is so far removed from the effect that the circumstance can be explained only by attributing it to the operation of luck. But nature knows no such law as luck. It is a man-made hypothesis which he explains away things that he does not understand. Everything having a real existence is capable of proof. Keep this one truth in mind and you will become a sounder thinker. Which is more important, one's thoughts or one's deeds? All deeds follow thoughts. There can be no deeds without their having first been patterned in thought. Moreover, all thoughts have a tendency to clothe themselves in their physical counterpart. One's dominating thoughts, that is, the thoughts one mixes with emotions, desire, hope, faith, not only have a tendency to clothe themselves in their physical equivalent, but they are bound to do so. Devil says, I operate wherever there is something I can control and appropriate. I have already told you I am the negative portion of the electron of matter. He says, I am the pain and disease and physical suffering. I am the unknown commissioner of poverty and famine. I am the inspirer of lust after the flesh. No one is smart enough to dodge the influence of hypnotic rhythm. One could just as easily avoid the influence of the law of gravity. I wrote down, because it's always happening. Thoughts flow in, so if you control the rhythm of the flow, that's how you control the effect that hypnotic rhythm has on you. Don't try to stop the flow, direct the rhythm. By abiding in Jesus, you don't have to focus on being smart enough, because the law of hypnotic rhythm fixes permanently the dominating thoughts of men, whether they be drifters or non-drifters. Whatever dominating thought that you repeat with strong emotion is going to fix permanently in your mind. I offer people more attractive bribes to think my sort of thoughts and indulge in my sort of deeds. The pattern that we're falling across over and over again in this book is that the devil will offer you the lusts of this world. It could be anything that your five senses can think of. Anything that makes life more comfortable. Anything that makes you seem more favorable in people's eyes. The devil will tempt you with things that seem good, but he'll make you overindulge in them. Just like food is good, but you may overindulge in it and gain weight because you ate more than necessary. He will offer you attractive bribes because he feeds us on the sop of our own vanity. He studies and controls us. The demons, like I said, this is another pattern that we've come across this whole video, have been here since the beginning of human existence, messing with us, learning how to mess with us. This is simply a guide on what Napoleon Hill discovered, how the devil and his demons are messing with us. But keep in mind, these are the same devil, same demons that have been messing with humans very effectively throughout the years. Just because you know this little bit of information doesn't protect you from it. The only thing that eternally protects you is Jesus. Jesus' blood is perfect and covers us so that the devil can't take us and appropriate us to his plane, as he calls it in this book. Napoleon says you control people by making negative thinking and destructive deeds pleasing to them. Is that correct? The devil says, that is the idea exactly. Chapter 7. Seeds of fear. Remember, your mind attracts that which your mind dwells upon. To divert you away from my opposition, I had only to feed you on thoughts helpful to my cause. And I wrote down, because fleshly desires want to be expressed. The devil ramps up flesh's temptations and sees what we do with it. Hypnotic rhythm, then, is something to be watched and respected. A better way of stating the truth is that hypnotic rhythm is something to be studied, understood, and voluntarily applied to attain definite desired ends. It already operates automatically. If it is not consciously applied to attain a desired end, it can and it will operate to attain undesired ends. In a similar manner, nature forces upon the minds of men the influences of their environment. Like I was saying earlier, every environment has a rhythm. Clean your room, you change the rhythm. So right here, nature forces upon the minds of men the influences of their environment, which are stronger than the individual's own thoughts. Children are forced to take on the nature of all influences of those around them, unless their own thoughts are stronger than the influences. Nature sets up a definite rhythm for every environment, and everything within the range of that rhythm is forced to conform to it. Man alone has the power to establish his own rhythm of thought, providing he exercises this privilege before hypnotic rhythm has forced upon him the influences of his environment. Every home, every place of business, every town and village, and every street and community center has its own definite, discernible rhythm. If you wish to know what a difference there is in the rhythms of streets, take a walk up Fifth Avenue in New York and then down a street in the slums. All forms of rhythm become permanent with time. Persistence into time is condensing your energy thoughts into matter. Physical equivalent. A nice street may be turned into a slum over time. Slum may be turned into a nice street over time with every room, every environment. The influences of the environment are stronger than the individual's own thoughts. If you just remove the environment influence, your focus will come. Ask yourself, what environmental influence is impinging upon and weakening your individual thoughts? Because your thoughts are the power, the energy you need, heightened forms of energy, condensed forms of energy, repeated with emotion in order to bring anything out of the ether and into matter. Napoleon says, does each individual have his own rhythm of thought? Yes, that is precisely the major difference between individuals. The person who thinks in terms of power, success, opulence sets up a rhythm which attracts these desirable possessions. This explains why both success and failure are the result of habit. Habit establishes one's rhythm of thought, and that rhythm attracts the object of one's dominating thoughts. I'm gonna say that again. Habit establishes one's rhythm of thought, and that rhythm attracts the object of one's dominating thoughts. Hypnotic rhythm is something resembling a magnet which attracts things for which it has a magnetic affinity. All successful people use hypnotic rhythm, either consciously or unconsciously, by expecting and demanding success. The demand becomes a habit. Hypnotic rhythm takes over the habit, and the law of harmonious attraction translates it into its physical equivalent. In other words, if I know what I want from life, demand it, and back my demand by a willingness to pay life's price for what I want and refuse to accept any substitute, the law of hypnotic rhythm takes over my desire and helps, by natural and logical means, transmute it into its physical counterpart. Is that true? That describes the way the law works. Science has established irrefutable evidence that people are what they are because of heredity and environment. They bring over with them at birth a combination of all the physical qualities of all their numberless ancestors. After they arrive here, they reach the age of self-consciousness, and from there on, they shape their own personalities and more or less fix their own earthly destinations as the result of the environmental influences to which they are subjected, especially the influences which control them during early childhood. Chapter 8, Definiteness of Purpose. Okay, so the 7 principles to attain spiritual, mental, and physical freedom. 1. Definiteness of purpose. 2. Mastery over self. 3. Learning from adversity, learning what not to do. 4. Controlling environmental influence. 5. Time through persistence, repeated action. That's how everything is done. That's how this book was written. Time, giving permanency to positive rather than negative through habits and developing wisdom. 6. Harmony, acting with definiteness of purpose to become the dominating influence in your own mental, spiritual, and physical environment. 7. Caution, thinking through your plan before you act. Devil says, you are pouring water on the fires of hell. I may as well tell you that any human being who can be definite in his aims and plans can make life hand over whatever is wanted. He wrote down my opposition, but I'm just going to say, God Almighty's clever little trick to cheat the devil of his control over people. God knows that definiteness of purpose closes the door of one's mind so tightly against me that I cannot break through unless I can induce one to form the habit of drifting. Like a vampire, he has to ask permission by inducing one to form the habit of drifting by either giving you thoughts that'll aid to his purpose, like we talked about the lusts of the world, or maybe it's just negative thinking. He caught you in a bad moment. You're having a bad day, a bad moment. Now he's going to start feeding you thoughts, the sop of your own vanity. I draw people away from definiteness with my promises. Keep in mind, he can't fill any of his promises. The devil is the father of all lies. I attract people by feeding them liberally of the thought habits in which they like to indulge. Couldn't have said it better myself. The privilege of definiteness can be maintained only by adopting it as a policy by which one is guided in all the affairs of life. One takes advantage of the principle of definiteness just as one may build a strong physical body through constant systematic use. Is that it? You have stated the truth clearly and accurately. So build your mental muscles. It's a mental gym. Your greatest asset is men's lack of caution, which enables you to lead him into the jungle of indefiniteness through simple bribes. Father of lies, simple little bribes. And we don't have any caution. We have lack of caution, and we allow him to drift us, lure us into the jungle of indefiniteness through simple bribes that are lies. We have learned beyond the question of doubt that anyone who adopts definiteness of purpose as a policy and uses it in all of his daily experiences cannot be induced to form the habit of drifting. Without the aid of the drifting habit, you are powerless to attract people through promises. Is this correct? Couldn't have stated the truth more clearly myself. That's what the devil said. That last line. Without the aid of the drifting habit, you are powerless to attract people through promises. And how do we stop the drifting habit? We have learned beyond the question of the doubt that anyone who adopts definiteness of purpose as a policy and uses it in all of his daily experiences cannot be induced to form the habit of drifting. When the child reaches the age of consciousness and begins to recognize the objects of its surroundings, it begins also to imitate others. Imitation becomes a fixed habit. Naturally, the child imitates, first of all, its parents. Then it begins to imitate its other relatives and daily associates, including its religious instructors and school teachers. But the imitation becomes a fixed habit over time, especially when it begins to repeat and lock in, The imitation extends not merely to physical expression, but also to thought expression. In a similar way, the child learns by imitation to limit its power of thought by filling its mind with envy, hatred, greed, lust, revenge, the lusts of the world. It learns through imitation of people around it, the lusts of the world and how to limit its mind by focusing on those things. And it destroys all possibility of definiteness because they just lock in on imitating others. Once any person learns the power of his own thoughts, he becomes positive and difficult to subdue. So the fact that you're this far in this video, you have learned the power of your own thoughts. The power of your own thoughts, free will, is the only thing that we have. It's the only function that we have to use through anything. My free will, my thoughts, moves my arm and my hands. I'm blinking unconsciously because of my thoughts, my rhythm. I cannot control any human being who discovers and uses the principle of definiteness. Once any person hesitates, procrastinates, or becomes indefinite about anything, he is just one step removed from my control. That's why you must have it as a policy. You must use it at all times. I eventually reclaim for my cause all who escape me temporarily through definiteness of purpose. The reclamation is made by filling the mind with greed for power and the love of egotistical expression, until the individual falls into the habit of violating the rights of others. You're so far indulged in the lust of this world and what you can get, you start violating the rights of others. And even if you are a non-drifter that has control of his mind, the devil gets you through that. That right there, getting you to start violating the rights of others for your own egotistical expression, greed for power and love. Then the devil steps in with the law of compensation and reclaims the victim through negative impulses, through overstepping. Show me what any person loves most, and I will have my cue as to how that person can be induced to drift until I bind him with hypnotic rhythm. The lust of this world, that which we covet, that which we hold dear, what any person loves most, and the devil will have his cue as to how that person can be induced to drift. Which is more apt to succeed? A weak plan applied with definiteness, or a sound, strong plan indefinitely applied? Weak plans have a way of becoming strong if definitely applied. I wrote down that's the most important line in this entire book. You mean that any plan definitely put into continuous action in pursuit of a definite purpose may be successful, even if it's not the best plan? Yes, I mean just that. Definiteness of purpose plus definiteness of plan by which the purpose is to be achieved generally succeeds, no matter how weak the plan may be. The major difference between a sound and an unsound plan is that the sound plan, if definitely applied, may be carried out more quickly than an unsound plan. Repeating it over and over again with a strong emotion, coloring it with time. When plans fail, he substitutes others, but he does not change his purpose. He perseveres. Eventually, he finds a plan that succeeds. So when a plan fails, substitute, continue. Don't take a break. Move. Persistence. Time. Do not stop. Always be definite in what you do. Free will. Do not get distracted. Chapter 9, Education and Religion. Nature's law is know what you want, adapt yourself to my laws, and you shall have it. The only mention of Jesus Christ in this entire book is right here. Does that harmonize with the teachings of Christ? Perfectly. Also, it harmonizes with the teachings of all truly great philosophers. Napoleon asks, is anything of more importance to a human being than an understanding of the forces and circumstances which influence his own mind? Devil says the only thing of enduring value to any human being is a working knowledge of his own mind. It seems strange that you would come to the devil to learn how to live. I should think you would go to my opposition. Why don't you? Right there, the devil recommends Jesus. The school system endeavors to teach children to memorize facts instead of teaching them how to use their own mind. Nor do they make any attempt to teach youths how to be definite about anything, overlooking the important question of how to use knowledge in the practical affairs of life. Teach the students how to budget and use time. Time is the greatest asset available to human beings and the cheapest. Teach the student the basic motives by which all people are influenced and show how to use these motives in acquiring the necessities and the luxuries of life. Teach children how habits become fixed through the law of hypnotic rhythm and influence them to adopt, while in the lower grades, habits that will lead to independent thought. Hence coming up with your own way of doing things, because you may see an angle that no one else has seen before, but if you just take the same route that everyone else takes, then you're never going to give yourself the opportunity to see those angles. You got to trust your intuition, to have that confidence in yourself that you can figure it out. Doesn't mean that you don't learn from others, it just means that you don't solely rely on others for the format of how you should do things. Teach children to express their own thoughts fearlessly and to accept or reject at will all ideas of others, reserving to themselves always the privilege of relying upon their own judgment. Teach children the value of harmony in their own minds, in that this is attainable only through self-control. Teach children the nature and the value of self-control. Teach children that there is a law of increasing returns which can be and should be put into operation as a matter of habit by rendering always more service and better service than is expected of them. That's an important one. Teach children the true nature of the golden rule, and above all, show them that through the operation of this principle, everything they do to and for another, they do also to and for themselves. Teach children that cigarettes, liquor, narcotics, and overindulgence in sex destroy the power of will and lead to the habit of drifting. Do not forbid these evils, just explain them. Teach children the danger of believing anything merely because their parents or someone else says so. I don't just believe in Jesus because church tells me to. I believe in Jesus because when I inspect the evidence, it's clear as day that the evidence backs up that Jesus really lived the life that was described, really died, and somehow resurrected and hung out for 40 days, so much that there was eyewitnesses or people outside of the Bible that say that this happened. You can't unexplain the movement that happened and the change that happened in the apostles, the people that were scared to death before he died and ended up dying, saying that they saw him after he rose from the dead. That change in character doesn't happen for nothing. It happened because they actually had an experience that confirmed the fact that they died for. Teach children to face facts, whether they are pleasant or unpleasant, without resorting or offering alibis. Teach children to encourage the use of their sixth sense, through which ideas present themselves in their minds from unknown sources, and to examine all ideas carefully. Teach children the full import of the law of compensation as it was interpreted by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and show them the law works in small everyday affairs in life. For everything you have missed, you have gained something else. And for everything you gain, you lose something else. The whole of what we know is a system of compensations. Every defect in one manner is made up in another. Every suffering is rewarded. Every sacrifice is made up. Every debt is paid. And show them how the law works in the small everyday affairs in life. Teach children that definiteness of purpose backed by definite plans, persistently and continuously applied, is the most efficacious form of prayer available to human beings. That's exactly the same thing as earlier when he asked what plan will work better. Not a weak plan that is persistently put in place or a strong plan that is not persistently put in place. And the devil says a weak plan has a way of becoming a strong plan if persistently applied. So right there, teach children the definiteness of purpose backed by definite plans, persistently and continuously applied, is the most efficacious form of prayer available to human beings. Because you're proving your faith by the fruit that is coming off the branches. Teach children that the space they occupy in the world is measured definitely by the quality and quantity of useful service they render the world. Money's made based off of the amount of value that you provide to other people. Teach children there is no problem which does not have an appropriate solution, and that the solution often may be found in the circumstances creating the problem. Teach children that their only real limitations are those which they set up or permit others to establish in their own minds. Teach them that man can achieve whatever man can conceive and believe. Because when you believe it, you expect it. And when you expect it, well, you're just going to do what's supposed to happen. Teach children to be true to themselves at all times. And since they cannot please everybody, therefore to do a good job of pleasing themselves. I said in relation to inner acceptance, letting go of all this negative anxiety about what most things come from us not wanting to be criticized by what other people think about us or how they perceive us. We can't please everybody all the time. Therefore, we must do a good job at pleasing ourselves. Not pleasing yourselves as in overindulging in the lusts of this world, but doing what you actually set yourself out to do. Your definite purpose backed by your definite plans, intentionally and continuously applied, persistently applied. Try to please God, not man, because God truly loves you. Are you the chief inspirer of sin? Yes, it is my business to gain control of the minds of people in every way possible. I'll keep saying it. He will use every form of human weakness available to gain and keep control of the minds that he possesses through negative space, lazy thinking, opening up your thinking through negative thinking, creating indifference and laziness, and entering and suggesting thoughts that are good for him. What is faith? It is a state of mind wherein one recognizes and uses the power of positive thought as a medium by which one contacts and draws upon the universal store of infinite intelligence at will. In other words, faith is the absence of all forms of negative thought. Is that correct? Yes, that is another way of describing it. I wrote down here, in accordance with Christ, which is stating the manner in another way. Faith is definiteness of purpose backed by belief in the attainment of the object of that purpose. Is that correct? That's the idea exactly. Hill succinctly sums up the definition. Faith is definiteness of purpose backed by belief in the attainment of the object of that purpose. Chapter 10, self-discipline. One must gain mastery over self. This is the second of the 7 principles. The person who is not master of himself can never be master of others. Lack of self-mastery is of itself the most destructive form of indefiniteness. Where should one begin when making a start at control over self? By mastering the 3 appetites responsible for most of one's lack of self-discipline. The 3 appetites are 1. The desire for food. 2. The desire for expression of sex. And 3. The desire to express loosely organized opinions. That third one. The first 2, food and sex, we're all familiar with. The third one is lazy thinking, loose thought, drifting. The third one, the desire to express loosely organized opinions. Because you're not definite on it. Just venting, blah, 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 blah. It gets you to find fault in other people so much that you don't have the time to break the habit of drifting yourself, as we said earlier in the book. It keeps you finding faults in other people so much that you spend time doing that and you focus on negative thought and he's entering your brain and then you get in the hypnotic rhythm of it and now you're not focused on what you can do to master yourself. If you're not a master of yourself, you'll never master others. So he gets you to constantly which does nothing. It does nothing. You think it does. It doesn't do anything. You all do it in some way, shape, or form, but we've got to stop it because it's food, sex, and the desire to express loosely organized opinions. These 3 are the ones which should be conquered first. When a man becomes master of these 3 appetites, he has developed enough self-discipline to conquer easily those of lesser importance. How can one master the emotion of sex? By the simple process of transmuting that emotion into some form of activity other than copulation. If humans would control their sex desires and transmute them into a driving force with which to carry on their occupation, that is, if they spent on their work 1/2 the time they dissipate in pursuit of sex, they would never know poverty. The desire can no more be killed than one can entirely stop a river from flowing. If the emotion of sex is shut off from the natural mode of expression, it will break out in some other less desirable form, just as a river will, if dammed, break through and flow around the dam. A person who has self-discipline understands the emotion of sex, respects it, and learns to control, transmute it into constructive activities. Just what damage is there in overindulgence of sex? It depletes the magnetic energy, which is the source of an attractive, pleasing personality. It removes the sparkle from one's eyes and sets up discord in the tone of one's voice. It destroys enthusiasm, subdues ambition, and leads inevitably to the habit of drifting on all subjects. I would like for you to answer my question in another way by telling me what beneficial ends the emotion of sex may be made to attain if mastered and transmuted. Controlled sex supplies the magnetic force that attracts people to one another. It is the most important factor of a pleasing personality. It gives quality to the tone of voice and enables one to convey through the voice any feeling desired. So when you have controlled sex, you have a magnetic force. It opens up the colors that you can paint with because you're not so stagnant. You're not so in your head. What relative position of importance would you give to the need for accurate knowledge on the subject of sex? It is next to the top of the list. There is but one thing of greater importance to human beings, and that is accurate thought. Because accurate thought is the death of the devil. Accurate thinking comes first because it is the solution to all man's problems, the answer to all his prayers. Accurate thinking is aided by properly controlled and directed sex emotion because sex emotion is the same energy as that which one thinks. The habit of expressing loosely organized opinions is one of the most destructive of habits. Its destructiveness consists in its tendency to influence people to guess instead of searching for the facts when they form opinions, create ideas, or organize plans. It trains us to guess instead of know. The habit of expressing loosely organized opinions is one of the most destructive habits, and I feel like it's not one that people say often enough. People know they shouldn't gossip, but they don't say it like that. The habit of expressing loosely organized opinions is one of the most destructive of habits. Just stop doing it altogether. Wise men keep their plans to themselves and refrain from expressing uninvited opinions. I think of it like a seed. When you bury a seed, you're not going to keep digging up the seed and showing it to your friends on the progress that it's breaking out. You're going to keep it in the dirt and you're going to water it and give it sunlight and you're not going to dig it up. So when you're first starting your idea, especially when it's brand new, keep it in the soil. Keep watering it. Stop expressing to everyone and telling everyone all your deepest, darkest, thought out plans before you even start them, because it's like pulling the seed out of the soil. Wise men keep their plans to themselves and refrain from expressing uninvited opinions. This prevents others from appropriating their ideas and makes it difficult for others to interfere with their plans. And they may not realize that they're interfering with their plans. You know, and just me saying it out loud without really having the idea, I've interfered with my own plan as I'm saying it out loud. Like, let your confidence build a little bit. Let the seed turn into a seedling. Let you see a sprout come up first before you start going and showing everyone. Besides, it'll feel a lot better when you have a full plant grown, a whole idea, a process, before you share it with other people. You'll have way more confidence and conviction in yourself. You let the seed grow. Why do so many people indulge in the habit of expressing uninvited opinions? The habit is one way of expressing egotism and vanity. You can say, look what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be great. And then you dissipate the energy. You dissipate the energy. Now it's gone. You should have harnessed it. So keep the seed in the soil. Keep it growing. Don't dissipate the energy. It needs the energy to grow, even inside yourself. Even if you're gonna do it regardless. Even if you're gonna say it and do it, keep it to yourself. Keep that energy so you can make it potent. Don't dissipate it. It's gonna take away your charge. You're gonna go in 60% charge instead of 120 like you should be. The desire for self-expression is inborn in people. The motive behind the habit is to attract the attention of others and to impress them favorably. Actually, it has just the opposite effect. When the self-invited speaker attracts attention, it usually is unfavorable. So the motive behind the habit is to attract the attention of others and to impress them favorably. But the thing is, when you're trying to impress people favorably, they can feel the try hard energy, and so it actually has just the opposite effect. But when you're coming from a mastered state of self-control, like the sex emotion is the same energy as that which one thinks. So if you're able to master the sex emotion, the control, the most potent desire that's going to drive a lot of people to risk their reputation and lives. But if you can master that, then you'll be able to master all the other negative influences that want to dominate your mind. And when you know how to master and dominate your own mind with the thoughts that you choose and you pick, then it comes off in a way you're able to, like this other thing said, that you're able to express when you have mastery of sex emotion. It gives quality to the tone of voice and enables one to convey through the voice any feeling desired, not through trying hard because you want to attract the attention of others to impress them favorably, but because you have genuine self-control and mastery and you're genuinely trying to get a point across, an emotion across. You genuinely are trying to transfer that understanding into someone else. And now you're able to, because it's coming from a place of self-mastery. And when you master yourself, now you are allowed to master others. If you're not a master of your own self and you're only doing it to attract their attention and try to impress them, you're not a master of yourself, and you're pinging off the environment and what the environment thinks. Like our number one deep-rooted fear is criticism. That's why people don't want to get up on stage and talk or post a video, because they think that their people that they know are going to think a certain way about them. And it's really just negative thought. That devil comes in with your lazy thinking and fills the gaps any which way that you choose not to think for yourself. There is an old saying that nothing is worth more than its actual cost. This applies as well to the free, uninvited expression of opinions as to material things. Whoa, you said something loosely thought, but if you weren't actually putting effort and focus and matter of condensed energy into that thought, that loosely expressed opinion isn't worth much. You know, it's not worth more than its actual cost. And what did it cost you? It cost you nothing. You're spinning yarn. But if you take time to knit that yarn into a beautiful Christmas sweater and you present it, everyone's gonna love it. So that's how your thoughts have to be. Knit together like a beautiful Christmas grandma sweater that you're gonna make your freaking grandson wear. He gonna like it. Let them lean upon the only dependable power available to any human being. And what is that? Themselves. Correction. God to guide our power that he gave us, okay?
If there is no God, morality is relative, because it obviously takes a mind to understand good and evil. Inanimate matter has no ability to distinguish between good and evil. Then if there is no God, it's obviously the human mind that creates right and wrong, which means morality is totally subjective, a matter of taste. Do you prefer broccoli to beans? Do you prefer abusing children to not abusing them? It's just a taste. It's just a subjective opinion. I'm standing here appealing to the part of you that knows very well that objective evil is real. The abuse of an innocent child is always evil.
The power of their own thoughts. Again, that God gave us the power of our own thoughts. God gave us free will. So wouldn't it be smart to, I don't know, listen to the guy that created what we're using in the first place for the instructions? Abide in the vine and the branch will bear fruit by itself. You think a branch is trying hard and stressing and flexing to bear some apples? No, it's the vine. It's the root of that tree that's doing it, and that's Jesus. All we gotta do is let that person just touch his robe, and she was healed. The only power they can control and may rely upon, power of their own thoughts. Again, not the only power that we can rely upon, okay? We can also rely upon God and Jesus. So even when our thoughts fail us, do not lean on your own understanding, but abide in Christ, because we can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The only power which cannot be perverted, colored, modified, and falsified by their dishonest fellow human beings. See, that wasn't even in relation to the thoughts. That's more like in relation to God. God is the only power which cannot be perverted, colored, modified, and falsified by fellow dishonest human beings. That, an accurate thought, is the death to the devil. So that's why I'm hammering down the point that Jesus is accurate thought. More than I want you guys to read this book, read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And keep in mind that the environmental influences are going to be stronger than your thoughts. The secret of how to break the power of hypnotic rhythm is wrapped in the 7 principles. The most important of these principles is self-discipline. If you can't be a master of yourself, you can't be a master of others. Drifting is not a natural law, but a man-made habit which leads to man's submission to the law of hypnotic rhythm. The 7 principles are the media by which man may break the hold of hypnotic rhythm and take possession again of his own mind. Chapter 11, Learning from Adversity. Learning from adversity is the third of the 7 principles. Every adversity begins with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Still, fewer people know the difference between temporary defeat and failure. If this knowledge were generally known, I would be deprived of one of my strongest weapons of control over human beings. If they knew the difference between temporary defeat and failure, they would not quit when they meet with opposition from life. If they knew that every form of defeat and all failures bring with them the seed of an unborn opportunity, they would keep on fighting and win. Success usually is but one short step beyond the point where one quits fighting. Failure often serves as a blessing in disguise because it breaks the grip of hypnotic rhythm and frees the mind for a fresh start. The law of hypnotic rhythm is capable of both negative and positive application, depending on how the individual relates himself to the law. Failure is a man-made circumstance. It is never real until it has been accepted by man as permanent. Stating it another way, failure is a state of mind. Therefore, it is something an individual can control until he neglects to exercise his privilege. Nature does not force people to fail, but nature does impose her law of hypnotic rhythm upon all minds. Through this law, gives permanency to the thoughts which dominate those minds. In other words, failure thoughts are taken over by the law of hypnotic rhythm and made permanent if the individual accepts any circumstances as being permanent failure. That's why we must not accept if you do not like it. You are not stuck there. You are just in temporary defeat, and eventually you will find the result that you're looking for. Like Edison, he failed 10,000 times and then boom, the light bulb worked. I'm using a light bulb there, using a light bulb there to light up this video, to power my house, the electricity. That came from surmounting failure and finding the equivalent seed of success, going step by step by step until he pulled it from the ether of reality. Failure is just necessary, that we have to continually fall forward into failure in order to gather data of what works, what doesn't, breaking the hypnotic rhythm of one that doesn't work, and following the results that are working, doubling down on them. Even if those don't end up fully working, you have to be open to not going, oh yeah, that it failed now. No, you just have to pull from it the seed of equivalent advantage. Failure brings a climax in which one has the privilege of clearing his mind of fear and making a new start in another direction. Failure proves conclusively that something is wrong with one's aims or the plans by which the object of these aims is sought. So it may not be your aim that's wrong, it may be the plans by which you're trying to attain those aims. Maybe you should keep the goal, keep the target that you have in your mind the same, but switch the approach. Do not give up. Just because you failed over and over again doesn't mean you're destined for failure. Many people have surmounted failure, criticism, betrayal before arriving. Failure is the dead end of the habit path one has been following, and when it is reached, it forces one to leave that path and take up another, thereby creating a new rhythm. But failure does more than this. It gives an individual an opportunity to test himself, wherein he may learn how much willpower he possesses. Failure also forces people to learn many truths they would never discover without it. Failure often leads an individual to an understanding of the power of self-discipline, without which no one could turn back after having once been the victim of hypnotic rhythm. Study the lives of all people who achieve outstanding success in any calling and observe with profit that their success is usually an exact ratio to their experiences of defeat before succeeding. Nature uses illness to break the physical rhythm of the body when the cells and organs become improperly related. And she uses failure to break the rhythm of negative thought when an individual becomes improperly related to himself in his own mind. That abstract, elusive thing called character is nothing but a manifestation of the law of hypnotic rhythm. Therefore, when speaking of one's character, it would be proper to say his thought habits have been crystallized into a positive or a negative personality through hypnotic rhythm. One is good or bad because of the knitting together of his thoughts and deeds through hypnotic rhythm. One is bound by poverty or blessed with abundance because his aims, plans, and desires, or lack of them, have been made permanent and real by hypnotic rhythm. Thoughts turn into your actions turn into your habits turn into your hypnotic rhythm. Remember, while I am talking, I am speaking of the influence of hypnotic rhythm in connection with all human relationships. Men who succeed in business do so entirely because of the way they relate themselves to their associates and to others outside of the business. So men who succeed in business do so entirely because of the way they relate themselves to their associates. Just like in business, your coworkers, your manager, or if you're the manager and the owner, how you relate yourself to the people working for you. Same with sports. You have to, with your associates, the people on your team, the coaches, announcers, people outside of the business, the fans. So whether it's your fans or your customers, how you relate yourself to them, and your teammates, whether it be your coworkers or your teammates, how you relate yourselves to the people that are helping you with the mission, and how you relate yourself with the people outside of the business. That is determining whether you're successful or not in anything that you do. People that you're working with and the relationships that you have with them, how people outside of your business you're relating to them, pulling them to you or not. Professional men who succeed do so largely because of the manner in which they relate themselves to their clients. It is much more important for the lawyer to know people and to know the laws of nature than it is to know the law. And the doctor is a failure before he starts unless he knows how to relate himself to his patients so as to establish their faith in him. Marriage succeeds or fails entirely because of the manner in which the participants relate themselves to one another. Proper relationship in marriage begins with a proper motive for the marriage. So how you're relating yourself to your partner is going to determine the success of the marriage. So he keeps us drifting and finding fault in other people so long that we don't have time to stop the habit of drifting ourselves. So anytime you find yourself finding fault in either your coworkers, that's your work harmony, your partner, that's your home harmony, your friends, how you're relating yourselves to the most important people in your life, the devil's going to try to get you to do stupid stuff to get you drifting into disharmony, because when you don't have harmony, it just disrupts the flow of everything. Hypnotic rhythm picks up the dominating motives, aims, purposes, and feelings of the contacting minds and weaves these into some degree of faith or fear, love, or hatred. After the pattern has taken definite shape, as it does with time is what shapes your thoughts into matter, it is forced upon the contacting minds and made a part thereof. That's the rhythm that you feel, people's energy. Their thoughts have taken definite shape over time and caused the rhythm that is their personality, how they present themselves, how they think. And over time, every environment is shifting and solidifying itself into a permanent rhythm. You see, therefore, it is not only one's deeds, but also one's very thoughts which determine the nature of all human relationships. I wish to be sure you understand that the law of hypnotic rhythm is something that no one can control, influence, or evade, but everyone can relate himself to this law as to benefit by its inexorable operation. Harmonious relationships with the law consist entirely of the individual changing his habits so they represent the circumstances and the things the individual wants and is willing to accept. This happens in real life, where a rhythm is formed when a bridge is caught up with a air pocket of wind. Starts a bridge moving, it wobbles. All bridges wobble a little bit, right? But eventually some bridges form this rhythm. They get an air pocket, it traps the air flowing, the bridge starts moving, and the bridge, if it catches a definite rhythm, will generate itself and keep itself going. It will not slow down until it gets faster and faster on its own. It's not the wind anymore, but the momentum of the rhythm that it has created, and eventually the bridge will just explode. It'll break itself apart. It's insane. I mean, bridge experts now have studied this over and over and over again to make sure that this doesn't really happen as much anymore. But especially when bridges were first being built, and still to this day, I believe, this still happens. So this is a real thing with bridges that proves hypnotic rhythm. But the thing is, if you take that rhythm, right, negative energy is going to be more constant in our lives. It's going to happen all the time. There's always something to feel. If you hurt your toe and it's hurting right now, it's hard to fight that off with positive thoughts. Even if you had a great day, your toe hurts and you feel it right now. That's the rhythm. Self-generating itself. The bad, negative stuff. It's going to happen, and it's going to catch its own rhythm to where it starts to generate upon itself. All right, I'm going to start to give you guys a little bit of an example here. We're going to get a little silly, but it's going to make sense when you see it. So it starts this rhythm going. It's generating, it's getting faster. Only way that you can stop hypnotic rhythm is to change the rhythm, baby. So you got to throw positive rock in there. It doesn't do anything. It's still going. You're like, oh, I give up. It can't do anything. You didn't throw enough thoughts in there. It's so strong. It's going. It's been going for a while. It's got its own rhythm. So you got to do more than that. Oh, you got it kind of off banner a little bit. Oh no, but if you don't throw more in there, it's going to catch rhythm again. Self-generating. You didn't get it down. The health bar wasn't down enough. So then you understand, oh, okay, I threw in more last time. Now I really got to commit. Throwing stuff in there. You know, and at first it looks crazier, even crazier than it was. But, oh, you got it off its rhythm. And you keep... and then you slow it down and it's regular again. And now cars can go across the bridge. Your thoughts can go between different places and start to generate their own rhythm without the crazy nonsense. That's exactly what you have to do. You have to bombard it over time, persistent, repeated thought. And if you want a heavier thought, a heavier stone to throw on that bridge to disrupt that rhythm, you got to feed it with emotion. Emotion is what makes the thought heavier, what makes the thought stronger. And that's exactly how I see hypnotic rhythm working. It can seem insurmountable. You're like looking at that bridge, you're like, dude, you can't do nothing about that, just let it break. But you can do something about it by disrupting the rhythm. And that's exactly what failure does. So a lot of times we think failure is this horrible thing. It is if you continue in the same mindset. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you change the action, change the habit that you're doing every day, over time, every day you're doing something different now than what you did when you failed, the rhythm's different. The failure was a blessing because if you had never failed, you wouldn't have changed what you were doing. You wouldn't never change the rhythm. Now you're on a different rhythm. You're going to hit different strides. You're going to hit different results because you're doing different things. Over time, it's going to crystallize into something where if you weren't doing those things over that time, you just wouldn't have got nothing. So failure is a good thing. It brings you data. Failure is absolutely necessary so that we get the data information of what works, what doesn't work. You're not God. You're not going to know what works immediately. So you have to rely on data. How do you get data? By experimenting. So experiments don't always go right the first time, do they? Otherwise, I'm pretty sure scientists would have flying cars by now. No one can change the law of hypnotic rhythm any more than one can change the law of gravity, but everyone can change himself. Remember, therefore, in all the discussion of this subject, that all human relationships are made and maintained by the habits of the individuals related. The term subconscious mind represents a hypothetical physical organ which has no actual existence. When any form of stimuli reaches the brain and takes the definite shape of thought, it is classified and stored away in a group of the brain cells known as the memory group. All thoughts of a similar nature are stored together so that the bringing forth of one leads to easy contact with all its associates. The system is very similar to the modern office filing cabinet, and it is operated in a similar manner. The thought impressions, which one mixes with the greatest amount of emotion or feeling, are the dominating factors of the brain because they are always near the surface at the top of the filing system. What he's saying here is the thoughts that are mixed out with the most emotion and the most often are going to be the dominating factors of the brain. They're going to be at the top of the filing system. So whenever you have lazy thinking, which we all are going to be lazy thinkers at one point or another, you can't always be fully conscious. You're going to get tired and go into autopilot. You know, like when you drive, you're just kind of autopiloting, but you're still kind of there, but you're kind of not. Those thoughts that you mixed with the most most feeling, with the most emotion, are going to be at the top of the brain. They're going to voluntarily do their own thing. Whenever you go into lazy thinking mode, you're going to go into negative things that you don't want to happen. That's why you keep doing them, because you give them the most emotion, negative emotion, repeated over time. So when you are lazy with your thinking, your brain voluntarily springs into action the thoughts at the top of the filing system. So you have to have the thoughts at the top of the filing system. First of all, abide in Christ, and it makes it easier. When you abide in Christ, the fruit happens on the branch on its own accord. You don't have to try. Even with just generally positive thoughts, if you have them the most and you're feeding them the most with emotion, then even when you are a lazy thinker, it will still kind of protect you. These emotional outbursts usually destroy harmony in all human relationships. The moment you're having a bad day and you're not thinking, these emotion-laden thoughts are so powerful, they cause you to rush into action before they've been submitted fully and approved by your reasoning faculty. That's why you have to be careful what you put over and over again in color with emotion, because it's not always going to check your conscious reasoning faculty for whether it can come out. It's going to spill out. The brain often brings together combinations of emotional feelings so powerful they completely set aside the control of the reasoning faculty. I wrote down: devil stores strong emotional thoughts and encourages us to say mean things. Drifts us via disharmony by tempting us to have loose opinions and to express them. Through the operation of the sixth sense, the brain of a human being may contact the filing cabinet of other brains and inspect at will whatever thought impressions are on file there. Brains attuned to the same rate of thought vibration can easily and quickly exercise the privilege of entering and inspecting each other's filing cabinets of thoughts. Mirror neurons. What I'm feeling, you can feel. In addition to receiving organized thoughts from the filing cabinets of other brains through the sixth sense, one can, through this same physical organ, contact and receive information from the universal storehouse known as infinite intelligence. The sixth sense is the organ of the brain through which one receives all information, all knowledge, all thought impressions which do not come through one or more of the five physical senses. Completeness of mind can be attained only by harmony of purpose and deed between two or more minds. Naturally, the question arises as to what is a proper relationship between people. The answer is that the proper relationship is one that brings to all connected with it or affected by it some form of benefit. What then is an improper relationship? Any relationship between people which damages anyone or brings any form of misery or unhappiness to any of the individuals. How can improper relationships be corrected? By change of mind of the person causing the improper relationship, or by changing the persons to the relationship. Some minds naturally harmonize while others just naturally clash. Successful human relationships, to endure as such, must be formed of minds that naturally harmonize. Quite aside from the question of having common interests as a means of bringing them into harmony. So it's not just about having common interests, it's about naturally harmonizing with the energy. Yeah, like how certain chemicals will go together and certain ones explode. They know how to associate minds which harmonize naturally. Ability to recognize the types of people whose minds naturally harmonize. Remember Hill's definition of the mastermind. Harmonious coordination of two or more minds working to a definite end. Adversity forces one to seek ways and means to definite ends by meditation and introspective thought. This often leads to the discovery and use of the sixth sense through which one may communicate with infinite intelligence. Adversity breaks old habits of thought and gives one an opportunity to form new habits. Therefore, it may serve to break the hold of hypnotic rhythm and change its operation from negative to positive ends. Failure is a blessing when it forces one to depend less upon material forces and more upon spiritual forces. Man has control over nothing and has no assurance of the permanent use of anything except his own power of thought. The greatest potential benefit of any circumstance which causes one to make a fresh start is that it provides an opportunity to break the grip of hypnotic rhythm and set up a new set of thought habits. New habits offer the only way out for people who fail. Most people who escape from the negative to the positive operation of the law of hypnotic rhythm do so only because of some form of adversity, which forces them to change their thought habits. Usually, the seed consists of some form of knowledge, some idea or plan. Am I to understand from what you say that every adversity is a blessing? No, I did not say that. I said there is the seed of an equivalent advantage in every adversity. I did not say that there was a full-blown flower of advantage, just the seed. Usually, the seed consists of some form of knowledge, some idea or plan or some opportunity which would not have been available possible except through the change of thought habits forced by the adversity. Am I to understand that the law of hypnotic rhythm is the same as that which Ralph Waldo Emerson called the law of compensation? The law of hypnotic rhythm is the law of compensation. Does this law immediately bless one with benefits of positive application of thoughts, or curse one immediately with the results of negative thoughts? The law operates definitely, but not always swiftly. Both the benefits and the penalties incurred through the law by individuals may be harvested by others, either before or after their death. In the operation of all of nature's laws, the fourth dimension, time, is an inexorable factor. The length of time consumed by nature in the relation of effects to their causes depends in every instance on the circumstances at hand. Nature grows a pumpkin in 3 months. A good-sized oak tree requires 100 years. She converts a hen's egg into a chicken in 4 weeks, but she requires 9 months to convert the egg of a human being into an individual. Time is the fourth dimension. Time is what is needed to take the effects, the things that we're doing, and turn the cause and turn them into effects over time, and for everything it's different. Like it says here, grow a pumpkin in 3 months. Grow an oak tree takes 100 years. You want to have a baby human? 9 months. So time, it's not going to happen swiftly, but it will happen definitely. Chapter 12, environment, time, harmony, and caution. Thought habits are stimulated by environmental influences. That's why the environmental influences are important, because they stimulate thoughts, which are repeated, which become habits. In other words, the material on which thoughts are fed comes from one's environment. Thought habits are made permanent by hypnotic rhythm. What is the most important part of one's environment, the part which determines more than all others whether an individual makes positive or negative use of his mind? The most important part of one's environment is that created by his association with others. Do you mean by this that constant association with a person whose thought habits are negative influences one to form negative thought habits? Yes, the law of hypnotic rhythm forces every human being to form thought habits which harmonize with the dominating influences of his environment. Then it is important that one select one's close associates with great care. Yes, one's intimate associates should be chosen with as much care as one chooses the food with which he feeds his body. Which class of associates has the greatest influence upon one? One's partner in marriage and in the home, and one's associates in his occupation. So your partner in marriage, because our flesh will become one. People in the home in general, so anyone in your immediate living environment, and one's associates in his occupation, so your work, your purpose, the thing that you wake up and do every day, definite goal that you have in life. Have you ever felt your attitude or mood become negative just by being in the presence of someone negative? All influences which establish thought habits are given permanency through the law of hypnotic rhythm. I would almost change that by saying all influences which establish thought habits are given permanency through time, which creates hypnotic rhythm. One may change the influences of his environment so that the dominating influences are either positive or negative, and the law of hypnotic rhythm will make them permanent unless they are changed through one's habits of thought. Stating the truth in another way, one may submit himself to any environmental influence desired, whether positive or negative, and the law of hypnotic rhythm will make the influence permanent when it assumes the magnitude of thought habit. So when it becomes automatic, when your autopilot takes over. That only happens when you repeat it so many amount of times throughout time, the fourth dimension. Then it assumes the magnitude of thought habit, because then your brain, it's at the top of the surface. Your thought habit automatically goes to that and pulls it up. All who are victims of the habit of drifting forfeit their power to choose their own environment. They become the victims of every negative influence of their environment because they're being lazy in their thinking, and they're not trying to focus on what they can control. They're letting the devil fill their environment and therefore their thoughts with whatever may happen. Yes, there is a way out for drifters. They can stop drifting, take possession of their own minds, and choose an environment which inspires positive thought. This they may accomplish through definiteness of purpose. Drifting is nothing but a negative state of mind, a state of mind conspicuous by its emptiness of purpose. It's just lazy thinking. Lazy thinking gives the devil a foothold. Listening to the whispers telling you to be lazy lazy in thinking. Just relax. That's him massaging you so that you start opening up the space that he can occupy and enter and start making all sorts of suggestions that are to his benefit, not to your benefit. It says here, they can stop drifting by taking possession of their own minds and choose an environment which inspires positive thought. This may be accomplished through definiteness of purpose. So first you must choose your definiteness of purpose, what you want your environment to theoretically look like in your brain, what you want your life to look like and feel like, and what you want to be doing every day. And then through that definiteness of purpose, your thoughts are so definite. Now you can start to go, how can I impact my environment and change around the things in my environment to inspire positive thought of that which I want? The most effective of all environments is that which may be created by a friendly alliance of a group of people who will obligate themselves to assist one another in achieving the object of some definite purpose. Again, Napoleon Hill's mastermind theory coming into full play here. This sort of alliance is known as a mastermind. Through its operation, one may associate himself with carefully chosen individuals, each of whom brings to the alliance some knowledge, experience, education, plan, or idea suited to his needs in carrying out the object of his definite purpose. The most successful leaders in all walks of life avail themselves of this sort of made-to-order environmental influence. I wrote down whether they realize it or not. Think about sports players when they get into the major leagues. All of a sudden they have a mastermind of different coaches. Looking back on video, they have different experts that, may not be better than the player at playing the game, but understands one aspect, like how to swing, how to tweak this little elbow degree to make you swing better. That person now has a mastermind of people, so whether they realize it or not, their outstanding achievement is possible because of the friendly cooperation of others. Us here on the bottom, we're not going to get given opportunities of mastermind people just randomly. You have to have a definiteness of purpose and then think about how you can influence your environment. And your most important environmental influence is your association with people who will obligate themselves to help you achieve something, because they're part of your mastermind group, they're part of your team, and how you're trying to pull out of the ether what you want. What establishes one's thought habits? All habits are established because of inherent or acquired desires or motives. That is, habits are begun as a result of some form of definite desire. Desires are organized impulses of energy called thoughts. Desires that are mixed with an emotional feeling magnetize the brain cells in which they are stored and prepare those cells to be taken over and directed by the law of hypnotic rhythm. When any thought appears in the brain or is created there and is mixed with keen emotional feeling of desire, the law of hypnotic rhythm begins at once to translate it into its physical counterpart. Dominating thoughts, which are acted upon first by the law of hypnotic rhythm, are those with which are mixed the strongest desires and the most intense feelings. They're acted upon first because it's at the top of the filing system in your brain. So as soon as you start to go in autopilot mode, you're going to act upon them first by the law of hypnotic rhythm. And it's usually bad things because we usually mix our strong desires for things with intense feelings of negativity. You can fight back, right? Remember that bridge. We don't want that. That's what negativity is going to do. It's going to do that to the bridge so it can break it. That's what the devil's trying to do to you and your willpower, to get it going, so that it's uncomfortable, so that it breaks, so that you give in. But you're dominating thoughts. You can dominate your own mind with your own free will and inject it full of positivity. So whether the thought is appearing in your brain randomly and you like it, inject it, or if it's not and you don't like it, then in that moment, I need you to create a thought that is different, that you want there. That thought that popped in that you don't want it, cool. Create a new thought and inject it with positive emotion. You do that and you just defeated that random thought. Thought habits are established by the repetition of the same thoughts. Emotion just makes it a heavier rep. What are the most impelling basic motives or desires which inspire thought action? The desire for sex expression and love, the desire for spiritual, mental, and physical self-expression, the desire for food, the desire for perpetuation of life after death, which Jesus can explain and prove. The desire for power over others, your self-expression, you want to be able to say stuff without thinking so much about it. The desire to imitate others, a big one. It's how we started out as humans, learning everything we know. The desire to excel others. All negative desires are nothing but frustrations of positive desires. Negative desires are nothing but frustrations of positive desires. They are inspired by some form of defeat, failure, or neglect, indifference, laziness by human beings to adapt themselves to nature's laws in a positive way. Yeah, he tries to discourage us through failure right? Through defeat and failure and making us feel like it's all for nothing, that you did all that for no reason. But we need to realize that's part of the process. If I correctly understand what you have said, all negative thoughts are inspired by one's neglect or failure to adapt oneself harmoniously to nature's laws. Is that correct? That is exactly correct. Nature will not tolerate idleness or vacuums of any sort. All space must be and is filled with something. Again, that's kind of like the law of compensation by Ralph Waldo Emerson. All space must be and is filled with something. Everything in existence of both a physical and a spiritual nature must be and is constantly in motion. The human brain is no exception. It was created to receive, organize, specialize, and express the power of thought. When the individual does not use the brain for the expression of positive, creative thoughts, nature fills the vacuum by forcing the brain to act upon negative thoughts. Or another way of saying, when the individual does not use the brain for expression of positive creation thoughts, he's being lazy in his thinking, the devil can occupy the lazy part of his brain. Right? It says nature fills the vacuum by forcing the brain to act upon negative thoughts. The devil comes in, grabs onto the foothold because, you let your security system disarm, and then the foothold comes back up. Or if you want to think of it another way, because that's the biblical way of looking at it, right? Because we always have this free will consciousness to have the security system up against the devil and not listen. But we get lazy in our thinking and give him the permission by being lazy, by being indifferent. We are giving him permission because we are neglecting, we're being too lazy to use our own thought, our own free will, our own consciousness. So he comes in and takes over because, like he says here, the nature fills the vacuum by forcing the brain to act. And since the devil is here messing with all of us, it's going to force the brain to act on negative thoughts. Now, if we had never eaten an apple, we had never sinned against God, then that wouldn't be happening. That's what heaven's going to be like. We're going to go back to that perfect harmonious nature that we have with God. But right now, there can be no idleness in the brain. Understand this principle, and you will come into a new and important understanding of the part environmental influences take in the lives of human beings. There can be no idleness in the brain. If there's idleness, there's lazy thinking, there's space for the devil to come in and grab a foothold. I also said maybe learn meditations. That way you're not grabbing onto unwanted thoughts. That's a big part of this as well, because you can't always control what is being thought in your head, because there literally can be no idleness in the brain. It'll be thinking something. If you are not the one doing the thinking and you're just like letting it happen, then there's no idleness. The devil will come in and force the brain to act upon negative thoughts by continually repeating them. So you have to use your free will. You have to build that mental muscle. Idleness was the devil's workshop. Nature has no such thing as dead matter. Every atom of matter is constantly in a state of motion. All energy is constantly in motion. There are no dead voids anywhere. Time and space are literally manifestations of motion of such swiftness that it cannot be measured by human beings. The next principle is time, the fourth dimension. Time is the law of hypnotic rhythm. The lapse of time required to give permanency to thought habits depends upon the object and the nature of the thoughts. Time divides all thought habits into two classes: negative thoughts and positive thoughts. Thoughts do not change from negative to positive or vice versa, except through voluntary effort on the part of the individual. Our free will. Time penalizes the individual for all negative thoughts and rewards him for all positive thoughts, accordance to the nature and purpose of the thoughts. If one's dominating thoughts are negative, time penalizes the individual by building in his mind the habit of negative thinking and then proceeds to solidify this habit into permanency every second of its existence. Positive thoughts are likewise woven by time into permanent habits. The term permanency, of course, refers to the natural life of the individual. Time is nature's seasoning influence through which human experience may be ripened into wisdom. They may, through the lapse of time, think their way into wisdom. Drifters are always at the mercy of the non-drifters, and time makes this relationship permanent. Wisdom is the ability to relate yourself to nature's laws so as to make them serve you, and the ability to relate yourself to other people so as to gain their harmonious, willing cooperation in helping you to make life yield whatever you demand of it. then accumulated knowledge is not wisdom? Great heavens, no. What is needed to convert knowledge into wisdom? Time plus the desire for wisdom. Wisdom is never thrust upon one. It is acquired, if at all, by positive thinking through voluntary effort. The majority of people who acquire wisdom do so after they have passed the age of 40. Prior to that time, the majority of people are too busy gathering knowledge and organizing it into plans to spend any effort seeking wisdom. What circumstance of life is most apt to lead one to acquire wisdom? Adversity and failure. She imparts wisdom to those who are ready to receive it. Adversity and failure. One can never be sure of knowledge that has not been tested. What is dependable knowledge? It is knowledge which harmonizes with natural law, which means that it is based upon positive thought, because natural law is positive thought, because good always beats evil. So it's knowledge which harmonizes with the natural law, which means that it is based upon positive thought. Because if I abide in Christ, the fruit will bear on its own accord, because you're in harmony. Time modifies all human relationships for better or for worse, depending upon the policy through which people relate themselves to one another. In the realm of thought, there is a time when it is proper to sow the seeds of thought, and there is a proper time to reap the harvest of those thoughts. The same as there is a time to sow and a time to reap from the soil of the earth. Without proper measurement of time between the sowing and the reaping, nature modifies or withholds the rewards of sowing. The next principle is harmony. Through the operation of this law, nature forces everything within the range of a given environment to become harmoniously related. Understand this truth and you will catch a new and a more intriguing vision of the power of environment. You will understand why association with negative minds is fatal to those seeking self-determination. I see, because the law of nature forces everything within the range of a given environment to become harmoniously related. It forces everything to become harmoniously related. So if you are in the range of a negative mind and creating that environment over and over again, the nature will force you, because you're within range of the negative environment. It'll force you to become harmoniously related to them. And if you're going to become harmoniously related to a negative rhythm, then your rhythm is going to be somewhat negative to be harmonious with it. So you have to remove that environmental burden and choose who you are around often. I wrote down extremely potent information. I ain't exaggerating. Do you mean that nature voluntarily forces human beings to harmonize with the influences of their environment? Yes, that is true. The law of hypnotic rhythm forces upon every living thing the dominating influences of the environment in which it exists. They must change their environment or remain in poverty. Nature permits no one to escape the influences of his environment. That's why the environmental influences are more powerful than your thoughts, because nature forces you to harmonize with it. So that's why you must change the environment and give your state of mind a better chance to harmoniously, relate itself to a better environment, which you have control over. Kind of feeds into itself. One feeds into the other. I said physically change it. Shift the room's energy. Like I was saying earlier in the video, if you change your room around, clean your room, you'll feel a difference. However, nature, in her abundance of wisdom, has given to every normal human being the privilege of establishing his own mental, spiritual, and physical environment. But once he establishes it, he must become a part of it. This is the inexorable working of the law of harmony. Definiteness of purpose is the starting point from which an individual may establish his own environment. I am beginning to see why successful business leaders are so careful in the choice of their business associates. That is the idea exactly. Observe with profit that the one thing all successful men insist upon is harmony among their business associates. The major difference between a Henry Ford and a day laborer. Think of the people you work with. Are they supporting you or holding you back? The last principle is caution. Next to the habit of drifting, the most dangerous human trait is the lack of caution. People drift into all sorts of hazardous circumstances because they do not exercise caution by planning the moves they make. The drifter always moves without exercising caution. He acts first and thinks later, if at all. He does not choose his friends. He drifts along and allows people to attach themselves to him on their own terms. He does not choose an occupation. He invites poverty by neglecting to protect himself against the environmental influences of the poverty-stricken. He loses his friends or converts them into enemies by his lack of caution in relating himself to them on a proper basis. The non-drifter always uses caution. He carefully thinks his plans through before he begins them. He makes allowances for the human frailties of his associates and plans ahead to bridge them. Isn't overcaution as detrimental as lack of caution? There is no such thing as overcaution. What you call overcaution is an expression of fear. Fear and caution are two entirely different things. Being prepared for something and anxiously worrying about something and not preparing, two different things. focus. Preparation is key. So being cautious, preparing. No such thing as overcaution. What you call overcaution is an expression of fear. Fear and caution are two entirely different things. The majority of people create for themselves far more disastrous hazards by total lack of the habit of caution than by overcaution. Lazy thinking. In what way may caution be used most advantageously? In the selection of one's associates and in one's method of relating oneself to associates. The reason for this is obvious. One's associates constitute the most important part of one's environment, and environmental influences determine whether one's form the habit of drifting or becomes a non-drifter. One's associates constitute the most important part of one's environment. The most important part of your environment is how you associate yourself with the people in your environment, because it forces you to harmonize with them. And environmental influences determine whether one forms a habit of drifting or becomes a non-drifter. Like if there's a jet engine in the background, I can try to focus, I can try to talk, but it's gonna be a pretty bad video because I'm not gonna be able to focus fully and you're not gonna be able to hear me even if I yell. So the environment does affect. That's just an extreme example so that you get my point. But if you remove the jet engine, now I can focus, now you can hear me. But yeah, environmental influences determine whether one forms a habit of drifting or becomes a non-drifter. The person who exercises due caution in the choice of associates never allows himself to be closely associated with any person who does not bring to him through the association some definite mental, spiritual, or economic benefit. Nothing contributes more to one's success and happiness than carefully chosen associates. Caution in the selection of associates becomes therefore the duty of every person who wishes to become happy and successful. The drifter allows his closest associates to attach themselves to him on their own terms. The non-drifter carefully selects his associates and allows no one to become closely associated with him unless that person contributes some form of helpful influence or bestows some definite benefit. It never occurred to me that caution in the selection of friends had so definite a bearing on one's success or failure. Without the exercise of caution in the choice of all associates, no one may be certain of success in any calling. On the other hand, lack of exercise of caution brings almost certain defeat in whatever one undertakes. Your cheat code is your social circle. That is the number one thing we all need to be paying attention to as I'm getting out of this book, your association with others, because that's the main dominating factor of your environment, which is going to be the main dominating factor of whether you're drifting or whether you're not. Your environment is going to play a vital role in that. In this, how you're relating yourself to people in your environment, that's the main part. Mastermind. Do you have a hard time saying no to other people? This chapter makes you realize that using caution in selecting your associates and learning to say no more often may speed you on your path to success. And I wrote down, this may be why saying no is so hard. The three important factors are the habit of drifting, the law of hypnotic rhythm through which all habits are made permanent, and the element of time. Here is a trio of forces which hold inviolate the destinies of all men. The three take on new and more important meaning when they are grouped and studied as a combined force. Moreover, difficulties seldom are the outgrowth of immediate circumstances. They are generally the climax of a series of circumstances which have been consolidated through the habit of drifting and with the aid of time. Take any circumstance you wish, measure it with reference to its relationship to the habit of drifting, hypnotic rhythm, and time, and you may ascertain accurately the cause of all success and all failure. The book summarized in one sentence. Here it is. One's dominating desires can be crystallized into their physical equivalents through definiteness of purpose, backed by definiteness of plans, with the aid of nature's law of hypnotic rhythm and time. The story of my interview with the devil is now in your hands. The benefits you will receive from it will be in exact proportion to the thought it inspires in you. One's dominating desires can be crystallized into their physical equivalents through definiteness of purpose, backed by definiteness of plans, with the aid of nature's law of hypnotic rhythm and time.